Welcome back to Neon Dream Games. I'm Nick, and in this video, we're going to start off the year with how do I get started in indie game development? All right, as I said, this video, I guess it was inspired by a question that I had from somebody who asked, how do I get started? I want to make games. How do I get started? And I responded to them in the comments, but then I thought, well, you know what? It's a brand new year. People are trying to make new goals for themselves. It's 2025. How do you start getting into game development in 2025? Some people think it's not worth getting into game development, that there's too many games being released, that there's no way to make money. But I guess let's kind of get into, first, you need to ask yourself, why do you want to make games? And, you know, is it for fun? Is it just to be creative, to learn a new skill? Are you looking to make a career out of it? These are all questions you need to ask yourself. And really, all of them are valid reasons. You just need to kind of understand what your personal goals are throughout this experience. And that will kind of shape where you go with it. But I absolutely believe that if you want to make a game in 2025, that if you put your mind to it, you'll make a game. Despite all the naysayers and people who might say it's not worth it, or, you know, what about AI? AI is coming up. Should we even bother? I think so. AI is not there yet, and you still have a personal touch into your games. I use AI in the games that I make and the ideas that I have, and I'm going to continue to do so, but I like to view it as I'm more of the director of that scenario, and AI is kind of my employee. But let's keep going. You've defined the reason why you want to make games. You need to set an expectation. This is going to be somewhat based on the reason why you're making a game. I would say, and many others are also saying, start small. I mean, in general, don't ever start with your dream game. That's a big no-no. That is going to just tie you up, and it's going to be too big, especially if you're just starting. I made a whole nother video on, well, I've got 2 videos on game scope, but my last one in particular is more of the philosophy or mentality that I want to take into this year in how I make games. And that's with the idea that I want to make small games, but if there is a larger game you want to make, like let's say you do want to make your dream game, break that dream game up into smaller parts that make up that dream game. Think about all the game mechanics that make up that dream game, and try to focus on one of those smaller mechanics and make a small game out of that mechanic. And once you kind of master that mechanic, go on to the next one and keep going until you get enough skill and enough confidence that maybe you can tackle that dream game in time. Probably not even in your first year. But that's especially, I think, if your reasons for making a game is monetary, essentially. You want to turn this into a career. If your sole reasons for making games is just to be, have fun and be creative, I mean, sure, go ahead and aim for your dream game. But honestly, I still think you're going to have a hard time, you're going to struggle, and you might even walk away from it because it's just too big. I would still suggest making small steps towards that bigger goal. But that said, what's the practical steps? How do you actually start? What should you do? How do you begin? Well, first you need to pick a game engine. A game engine is sort of the construct, or whatever you want to say, the brain behind the game. It's the thing that it puts all the pieces together, the graphics, the code, the music, audio, sound effects. It pulls all those pieces together and does a lot of behind the scenes things for you that hopefully will simplify it. You don't actually need to use a game engine, or at least a pre-made one. But if you're a total noob, total beginner at this, I would not recommend trying to create your own game engine. So there are 3 big game engines that people like to take a look at. there is Unreal Engine. You've probably heard of this if you've played video games. It's usually used in big 3D type games that usually often look more realistic. So if you're looking to do big 3D games, that's a possibility to consider. But then there's Unity. Unity can handle most game types, whether that's 2D or 3D. And it does, again, a lot of the behind the scenes things for you, hopefully simplifies things a bit. Now, I don't have any personal knowledge in Unreal or Unity. What I do know is that if you were going to go down the path of wanting to make money or make a career out of this, if you have a successful game, Unreal and Unity will take a cut of your sales. And I don't know the numbers right now, but you can go look those up. You can kind of read what they are. I believe you can make games for free in them. You can download the engines and you can make games for free. But if you publish a game on a platform like Steam and it has a certain monetary success, they will take a cut. Which then brings me to the third game engine, and that is Godot. Godot is the engine that I personally use and the engine that I chose. It is an open source engine. It is free, just like the other ones to use, but there's no taking any cut. Whatever you make, you make. You could make the most popular game in the world and Godot isn't going to take their cut in the end. Each one has different ways of programming. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe Unreal uses a more visual aspect where you don't necessarily need to know a ton of code, but you also can code. Unity, I believe, uses like sort of a tree thing, which is also sort of like a visual thing, but also you can code. And I believe those use C, one of the C, like C sharps, I think. I'm not familiar. You can go look it up. Those are coding languages like C++, C sharp, and then Godot uses a GD script, which from my understanding is much like the coding language Python. And it's very simplistic. It's not simplistic. It's like it's a new skill. It's a new skill you're going to have to learn, coding. But let's not get too far ahead yet. You're going to have to kind of look at the pros and cons of each one. I chose Godot because it's open source and free. It may not have all the bells and whistles of the other ones yet, but it's getting there and it's gaining popularity steadily. And I just felt like, I don't know, I bought tutorials on how to use Godot, and that sort of leads me into my next step. So once you pick a game engine to work within, then I would suggest you start watching tutorials. If you're a complete beginner and you don't know anything, then there are a few options. YouTube is obviously a free option to find tutorials. It can sometimes be a little disjointed to piece together your learning track, essentially, but it is possible to find videos. There's a relatively popular tutorial from Brackey's. I will try to list some of these things here, but there's a Brackey's tutorial on how to make a 2D game, and he also has a tutorial on, like, in Godot on how to do GD script, like the coding aspect of Godot. And I haven't personally watched those, but from my understanding, he is quite a good teacher. But I will say the person that I have learned the most from, and again, this is going to be a bit disjointed. He's going to focus on specific aspects, but you can look back at his videos. I haven't even looked at everything, but there's a guy called DevWorm, and I think he has the best tutorials on Godot. He just teaches very well, but those are free options you can look at. You could also go to websites like, well, honestly, one of the websites that I would probably recommend at this point is Zenva. Now, I wish I was sponsored on that, but I'm not, but I'll just mention it. Zenva has many tutorials for, like, all of these. So there's Unreal, Unity, Godot. There's probably even other ones on there. So at this point, if you're just starting out and you want to pay a little bit of money, I think you can get a year membership on there for under $100, and you get access to all of their tutorials, and it's pretty great. So I would definitely recommend, if you have a little bit of funds, to check that out. And start kind of just looking through their tutorials, and they're going to have a nice course on how to complete a full game, essentially, and games in many different genres. So if there's a certain game you're dreaming up in your head, they probably have a tutorial that's pretty close to it that can help you along the way. So at that point, you pick your game engine, you've started to watch tutorials, you're starting to gain knowledge in the game engine that you're using, you're learning to code. At some point, you're going to need to break off and get out of the tutorials and start working on a game of your own. So at that point, we go back to the kind of that topic of scope. You need to figure out what you want to make. And sometimes one of the easiest things to do is just try to make a game that's similar to another game you like. You know, these are very basic type games, but think of Flappy Bird or something, or Frogger or something like that. You know, just go back and look at some of the early games and, you know, Mario, anything like that. Just something that you can do that's pretty simple, like create a simple platformer or something. Honestly, I would go back and look at games on like Atari or something where they're pretty basic back then. You couldn't do anything crazy advanced back then. So like I said, like Frogger or something, and you could just like update the graphics, maybe put a little modern twist on it or something, just something basic to start getting you into programming. But if you don't want to replicate a game and you do have an idea for something, well, then just go for it and take the knowledge that you've begun to learn in the tutorials and apply that to your own game. And I would consider avoiding like over ambitious ideas. Stick to like one game mechanic or whatever. Don't make a big RPG or whatever. Again, like I'm saying, these are the big ones. Make a simple platformer or something like that. Think very small so that you can accomplish something, because that's really one of the best things, is like accomplishing something, completing something and saying you did it. That's going to really help you feel good about where you're going and where you're heading. So I would stick sort of with that. And along that way, if you get comfortable enough with it, before you get too far into your game development, I'm going to kind of back you up a tad, and I'm going to talk about prototyping. So let's say you do come up with an idea. Let's say you want to make a fishing game, like a simple 2D fishing game. Maybe you make a very simple prototype with very simple graphics that just focus on the gameplay, the act of fishing. Maybe you make 3 different prototypes that have, you know, essentially 3 different fishing mechanics, and just sort of see which one is better. Maybe you could have a couple of people try them out and they could vote on which one they think is more fun. And then from that point, you can really start to flesh out that game. I mean, try to keep prototypes simple and quick, like make them in hopefully just, a couple few hours or something like that. You don't want to spend a lot of time on a prototype, but enough time to get an understanding where you're at. And then again, you're going to need to do graphics at some point. So if you're not comfortable with graphics, you're not like a graphic artist or anything, you can look at asset packs. And a good place to go for that is itch.io. There's tons of asset packs. Some of them are free. Some of them you have to pay for, but you can get something simple, spend a few bucks to get animated character or something, and start using that in your game so you can have some graphics to work with rather than, simple shapes and blocks and things. But if you do have the ability and the skill to create your own artwork, well, then by all means, go ahead and do that. But don't get too bogged down on the artwork to begin with. Focus on the gameplay and make sure you're making a fun game before you really lock in on the art. It's fun to have a little bit of art in there, some placeholder art and whatever. You want it to look good, and even while you're developing it early on, I just wouldn't devote like a ton of time into that until you're certain kind of the direction you're going. Which, again, this starts to bring me into the aspect of indie game developers wear many different hats. There's the programming side, there's the graphic side, like creating visual graphics for your game. There's music and there's sound effects, all these different pieces of the puzzle that you have to fit together to create your final game. And you probably aren't going to be skilled in all those aspects, at least not extensively. So that is where asset packs come in. You can buy not only artwork, but you can buy music. You can buy sound effects and different things. There's different packs that people sell, all that stuff. Just consider what you're trying to make and what you need. And there are ways to get some of that for pretty cheap. And there's also to the point where you could commission somebody to make something specific for you, which is going to cost more money. And then that leads me into AI. Kind of the elephant in the room these days. How does AI fit into all this? Well, as I said earlier, AI is sort of like my employee. I brainstorm with them. I ask questions. If I can't figure out how to code something, I might ask it to help me understand how to code that, give me the code for something. But I would caution against copying and pasting code because that's not going to help you learn as much. It's better if you look at the code and you type the code into your game engine. That will help cement it a little bit more, and hopefully it'll help you understand it as well, because it really doesn't do any good for you to just get a bunch of code, but you don't really understand what it's doing, because then you don't know how to fix it and tweak it. And that's why I say from the beginning, don't skip the tutorial phase. Learn how to code and make games without AI for at least for a little bit, because I'm going to tell you right now, AI is not always accurate. It's not always correct. So it's good to have a foundational knowledge on how to code and understand what you're doing, so that honestly, sometimes you can correct the AI. But that, you could also use AI to help you make your game assets as well. There's obviously a ton of different things out there, and this is obviously a gray area for people. Some people are going to agree with me. Some people are going to balk at it and say we should not be using AI. We're taking jobs from people. You know what? You can do whatever you want. Most people, in the end, when it comes to the final product, don't care. That's the honest truth. They aren't going to check on whether you used AI or not. They just want to know, do you have a fun game to play? And that's really it in the end. That's sort of where I would start. That's sort of the fundamentals. A couple other things. Keep watching YouTubers, subscribe to my channel as I hopefully can continue to give you some tips and ideas, and you can go on this journey along with me too, because I'm basically doing all this stuff as well. In fact, I'm going to start this year off by doing a couple more tutorials, because I just want to get jump started, and I want to understand a few maybe game mechanics that I haven't really dabbled with. So I'm going to check out a couple of tutorials myself. There's always room for continual growth and gaining new knowledge. And I'm 44, guys. If I can do it, you guys can do it. A lot of you guys are going to be younger than me. Some might be older. And you know what? You can do it too if you just put your mind to it. If you want to be challenged a bit, there are also things called game jams. You can look up those. I'm pretty sure there's some happening most of the time. Just look up game jams. There'll be rules for them. A lot of it's like make a game in 48 hours. And now when they say 48 hours, usually it's 48 total hours across like maybe 2 weeks or a month or something. And they might even give you like a parameter on what kind of game you need to make. They might even give you an asset pack and say you need to make a game using this asset pack. But those can be good ways to just spark creativity, sort of. And I haven't personally done one. I'm not sure if I want to, but there are some of you out there that's going to be very enticing and sound fun. If you're looking to just do this for fun and everything, that might be something for you to look into as well. There's more stuff I could talk about, kind of where you can go after you make your game, publishing it. You can always put your game on itch.io for free or for money. You can, if you're really looking to make a career out of it, you can be trying to put a game on Steam or even consoles and things. That's going to be harder to do. But itch.io is the easiest place if you want just feedback and you're not looking to make, any money at all, or you might make a little bit maybe, but otherwise Steam does have an entry fee of $100 basically to put a game onto their website. So you have to be aware of that, or put it into their catalog, if you will. So those are some of the kind of end game pieces that this video isn't really about, but I just wanted to throw them in there as sort of like, you can go look up those aspects later, and hopefully down the road I might do some videos on those as well, as I kind of get to those steps myself. But I have dabbled into making a Steam page, but just not to full completion yet. But I think the things that I did tell you up to this point is going to be enough to really help you dive in, especially if you're a complete noob, complete beginner, and you just don't know where to start. So this is going to get you launched into game development. This is going to help you start pursuing that dream. Maybe it's a career, just a new skill, whatever it might be. I hope that you guys can stick with it. It's not always easy. And if you watch my videos, you're going to see it's not always easy. But please go check out my previous videos as well. I have a lot more videos that sort of talk on different subjects and everything, especially my scope video. I really want to caution people, don't think you can dive in and make that dream game on your first shot. Hold back and build up your knowledge base and skill set before you get to that point. But anyways, that's it. I think that's going to be enough to get you guys started. Stick around for more videos this year. As I said, I'm going to be probably doing some tutorials myself. I'm also going to be learning how to do a bit more of my own game art and that sort of stuff. In fact, that's going to be a big focus for me in January here, but I'll talk more about that in my next devlog. So if you haven't already, like I said, check out my other videos and devlogs. There's going to be some links here at the end when Neon takes us out on this video. Check those playlists and things. And until next time, keep YouTubing it up.
Thanks for checking out Neon Dream Games channel. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button so you can stay up to date on all the latest videos we have to offer. Don't forget to leave a comment to suggest what kind of videos you'd like to see more of in the future. See you in the next video.